October 22nd, 1966. Inside Wormwood Scrubs prison, one man slips away. Outside the 20-foot wall, an accomplice waits with a rope ladder. Seconds later, a getaway car vanishes into the night. That man is George Blake, an MI6 officer and a Soviet spy. For 9 years, he passed every secret that touched his hands to the KGB. Agent names, safe houses. The most expensive intelligence operation of the Cold War, betrayed before it even began. At least 40 Western agents executed because of him. Britain sentenced him to 42 years. He served 5, then vanished. The most insane part? He escaped without any help from Moscow, just prisoners who liked him. So how did a British spy become the KGB's most valuable mole? And why did he do it for free? June 25, 1950. North Korean tanks roll across the 38th parallel. The Korean War begins. 3 days later, Seoul falls. George Blake is inside the British legation when soldiers storm through the gates. He is an MI6 officer working undercover as a vice consul. Now he is a prisoner. The North Koreans march him north with 30 other Western diplomats. Sub-zero temperatures. Men collapse on the roadside and never get up. Hundreds die on the march. Blake survives. For 3 years, he sits in captivity. Then the American bombers come. B-29. Flying fortresses carpet the countryside. Blake watches from his cell as villages disappear in fire. Civilians, all of them. The young men are already gone fighting in the war. What remains burns. Blake feels something shift inside him. He later describes the moment. It made me feel ashamed of belonging to these overpowering countries, fighting against what seemed to me defenseless people. I felt I was on the wrong side. He makes a decision and requests a secret meeting with his guards. When they arrive, he makes an offer. He will spy for the Soviet Union, free of charge, of his own will. He volunteers. The Soviets accept. They assign him a code name, DIOMID. In 1953, the war ends. Prisoners are released. Blake boards a plane back to Britain. When he lands at RAF Abingdon, the nation celebrates. George Blake is a hero, a loyal servant of the crown. No one knows he already belongs to Moscow. MI6 welcomes him back. They assign him to Y-section processing wiretaps of Soviet diplomats and Red Army officers. Every recording passes through his hands. All of it flows straight to the KGB. In October 1954, Blake marries Gillian Allen, an MI6 secretary. She knows nothing. His colleagues suspect nothing. He attends meetings, files reports, climbs the ranks, and every month he meets his Soviet handler. The British believe they rescued a loyal officer from a communist prison. They trust him with their most sensitive operations and give him access to names, networks, entire intelligence structures across Eastern Europe. Blake photographs it all, passes every file, betrays his country. He will later say, "I don't know what I handed over because it was so much." The prisoner from Korea is free, but he never stopped being a prisoner of his own choice. He chose Moscow, and for the next 9 years, he will gut British intelligence from the inside. 1955, MI6 sends Blake to Berlin, the Cold War's front line. His mission: recruit Soviet officers as double agents, turn enemies into assets, build networks behind the Iron Curtain. Instead, he does the opposite. Every month, Blake boards a train to East Berlin. He rides through checkpoints, crosses into Soviet territory, and meets his KGB handler at a safe house. He hands over rolls of film, identities of every agent Britain is running in Eastern Europe. Then he rides back, sits at his desk, files his reports like a loyal officer. The Soviets see their most valuable asset, but Blake's greatest betrayal is still coming. December 1953, London. A top-secret meeting takes place between the CIA and MI6. The agenda, Operation Gold, a joint mission to dig a tunnel from West Berlin into the Soviet-controlled East. The target: underground telephone cables carrying military communications from Soviet headquarters at Karlshorst. If they tap those lines, they can hear everything: troop movements, strategic plans, the inner workings of the Red Army. The tunnel will stretch 1,500 feet, cost $6.5 million. The most ambitious intelligence operation of the Cold War. George Blake sits in that meeting. He is the secretary. That same week, he meets his Soviet handler. He hands over a sketch of the tunnel route with every detail. Moscow knows about Operation Gold before the first shovel breaks ground. The tunnel becomes operational in May 1955. British and American technicians tap into the cables. Intelligence floods in. Tens of thousands of recordings. Enough to convince MI6 they'd pulled off a miracle. The CIA celebrates. MI6 calls it a triumph, and the KGB watches in silence. They allow the tunnel to operate for 11 months and 11 days. Disinformation flows through the lines. Exposing the tunnel means exposing their mole, and Blake is worth more than any secret the West could steal. April 1956, Soviet soldiers stage a discovery. They dig up the tunnel, cut the cables, and invite the press. But the truth stays buried. The tunnel was compromised from day one. Blake continues his work. Year after year, file after file, he estimates he betrayed over 400 Western agents. Some sources say 600. Many are captured, interrogated, executed. He later admits, "I gave the KGB everything my fingers touched." Years later, even John le Carré would call it monumental. Blake handed over the entire breakdown of MI6. For years, British intelligence bleeds. Operations fail, and the mole sits comfortably inside headquarters, sipping tea with the men he is destroying. But secrets have weight, and Blake is carrying too many. Somewhere in Warsaw, a man is about to make a phone call that will end everything. April 1958, Warsaw, Poland. A man walks into the American embassy and drops off a package. Inside, documents, microfilm, and a letter. The sender identifies himself only as Sniper. His real name is Michał Goleniewski, deputy head of Polish military counterintelligence, one of the most senior intelligence officers in the communist bloc, and he has decided to betray everything. Over the next 3 years, Goleniewski sends 13 packages to the CIA. More than 5,000 pages of Polish intelligence files, 8,000 pages of Soviet documents. The CIA calls him the best source they have ever had. Buried in those files is a single detail that will bring down George Blake. Goleniewski identifies a mole inside MI6, a British officer recruited by the Soviets during the Korean War, an officer with access to the Berlin tunnel operation, now stationed in the Middle East. The CIA passes the information to London. MI6 reviews their personnel files. The profile matches only one man, George Blake. By now, Blake has moved to Lebanon. He is studying Arabic at the Middle East Center for Arabic Studies. A quiet posting, he suspects nothing. In early 1961, a telegram arrives. MI6 headquarters wants him back in London. Routine consultations, they say. Nothing urgent. Blake boards a plane. He lands in England on April 3, 1961. A car meets him at the airport. The driver takes him directly to MI6 headquarters. Inside, 2 interrogators are waiting. The questioning begins slowly. They ask about his time in Korea, his years in Berlin, his contacts. Blake answers calmly. He has rehearsed this moment in his mind 1,000 times. He knows how to lie and has been doing it for 9 years. Then the interrogators change tactics. They offer him an escape. Blame it on torture. Say you were forced. MI6 might show mercy. Blake explodes. Nobody tortured me and blackmailed me. I myself approached the Soviets and offered my services to them of my own accord. Blake realizes what he has just done. In his anger, he has confessed everything. He keeps talking. For hours, he describes his recruitment, the documents he photographed, and the tunnel he betrayed. By the end, MI6 has a complete picture of the damage. It is catastrophic. May 1961, the Old Bailey Courthouse, London, secret trial. Britain buries the disaster from public view. Blake pleads guilty on all 5 counts. The judge delivers the verdict, 42 years in prison, longest sentence ever handed down by a British court. 1 year, the newspapers claim, for every agent Blake sent to their death. Guards escort him out of the courtroom. A van transports him across London, into Wormwood Scrubs prison. Britain believes justice has been served. The mole is caged and damage is done, but at least it is over. They are wrong. May 1961. George Blake enters Wormwood Scrubs prison. 42 years stretch ahead. He is 39. By the time he walks out, he will be an old man. Blake decides he will never serve that sentence. He plays the long game, presents himself as a model prisoner, polite, helpful, reformed. He teaches French and German to other inmates and hosts Sunday morning coffee sessions. Guards come to him for advice. Within months, prison officials remove him from the escape risk list. But Blake is watching, studying, and looking for the right people. He finds them. Sean Bork becomes his closest ally, an Irishman. 7 years for mailing a bomb to a policeman. Reckless, anti-authority, exactly what Blake needs. Through Bork, Blake connects with Michael Randall and Pat Pottle, anti-nuclear activists who see 42 years as inhuman. They agree to help. Blake makes his pitch. Bork agrees to lead the escape from outside. Randall and Pottle agree to handle logistics. They raise money, rent a safe house, buy a getaway car. The plan takes shape. Early 1966, Bork is released on parole. He moves into a flat near the prison. He purchases a two-way radio. Then he smuggles a walkie-talkie into Wormwood Scrubs, hidden inside a pot of pink chrysanthemums. Now Blake can communicate from inside his cell. They set the date. October 22nd, 1966. A Saturday. The night of the weekly film screening. That evening, inmates file into the hall. Attention drifts to the screen. Blake slips away. He moves through the corridor to a window. A convicted burglar has already loosened one of the iron bars. Blake removes it, squeezes through the gap, drops onto a rain-soaked rooftop. The tiles are slippery. He crawls to the edge, grabs the gutter, lowers himself into the yard. He presses against the wall. Waits. On the other side, Bork crouches in the darkness. He holds a rope ladder. The rungs are made of size 13 knitting needles, light enough to throw, strong enough to hold a man's weight. Blake whispers into the walkie-talkie. Bork hurls the ladder over the 20-foot wall. Blake climbs. He hits the ground hard. Bork drags him to the car. They speed away. 1 block later, Bork slams into another vehicle. Pedestrians stare. For a moment, everything freezes. Then Bork floors the accelerator. They vanish into the London night. Back at Wormwood Scrubs, guards discover Blake is missing. Alarms scream. Police flood the streets. They search airports, ports, embassies. A tip suggests Blake is hiding inside a harp case with a Czech orchestra. Officers tear apart every instrument. They find nothing. Blake watches the manhunt on television from his safe house. He and Bork toast with whiskey. For 2 months, he hides in London. Then Randall arrives with his camper van. His wife and children sit in the front, the perfect cover. Blake crawls into a hidden compartment beneath the back seats. On a cold December night, the van reaches the East German border at Helmstedt. East German handlers greet him. He is free. Moscow awaits, and the KGB is ready to welcome their most valuable agent home. December 1966. George Blake crosses into East Germany. A car waits at the border. KGB handlers escort him through the night. Destination, Moscow. The Soviet Union rolls out the red carpet. They give him a new identity, Colonel Georgy Ivanovich Bekter. They hand him the rank of KGB colonel and provide a rent-free apartment in central Moscow. A dacha outside the city, government pension with a car. The man Britain condemned as a traitor becomes Russia's greatest hero. Awards follow. The Kremlin treats him like royalty. He lectures at intelligence academies, trains the next generation of Soviet spies, writes 2 books. His face appears on state television. Blake settles into his new life, learns Russian fluently, adopts Soviet customs. For the first time, he tells interviewers, he feels at home. "I was always a foreign car," he says, "but I adapted to Russian roads." Back in Britain, the fallout continues. MI6 scrambles to rebuild. Networks across Eastern Europe collapse. The damage Blake caused takes years to repair. Some say it never fully healed. Sean Bork, the man who threw the ladder, follows Blake to Moscow. The KGB gives him an apartment, but Bork hates Soviet life. He wants out. Blake suggests the KGB kill him. They refuse. Instead, they send Bork back to Ireland. He dies in 1982, penniless and alone, collapsed on a roadside in County Clare. Michael Randall and Pat Pottle face trial in 1991 for helping Blake escape. They admit everything. but the jury refuses to convict. 42 years, they argue, was inhuman. The men walk free. Blake watches from Moscow. He feels vindicated. The years pass. The Berlin Wall falls. The Soviet Union collapses in 1991. Everything Blake believed in crumbles. The system he served disappears. He stays anyway. Interviewers ask about the agents who died because of him. At least 40 executed, maybe more. Blake shrugs. He claims the KGB assured him nobody was killed. He believes them. Former KGB General Oleg Kalugin offers a different view. George Blake had that innocent mind. He's still a very naive man and didn't want to know that many people he betrayed were executed. Blake refuses to call himself a traitor. To betray, you first have to belong, and I never belonged. In 2007, Vladimir Putin awards him the Order of Friendship. Blake lives out his final years in his Moscow dacha. He describes himself as virtually blind, but he remains a committed Marxist-Leninist until the end. December 26, 2020. George Blake dies in Moscow. He is 98 years old. Russia buries him with full military honors in Troyekurovskoye Cemetery, the Alley of Heroes. His name is etched onto a monument outside SVR headquarters, alongside the greatest spies in Russian history. Britain remembers him differently. The man who fooled MI6 for nearly a decade, and the traitor who escaped justice died in comfort.